Well, hello YouTube. My name's Charlotte and welcome to my studio. So this week I wanted to get a little bit more personal with you guys. I know I've shared things about my artwork recently, however you can tell a lot by an artist's journey. So I'm going to take you through everything that I've kind of created through the years. There's little bits of snapshots and hints towards future videos. So without further ado, here we go. So I am in my studio at the moment, absolutely surrounded by artwork. I've got my table in front of me, which spans from year 7 all the way through to work that I'm currently producing. And I've even got some work surrounding me and obviously some of my more recent works in the background. I'm in my comfies today, as today is more of a studio chill day, recording some YouTube and editing all of that as well. However, the story of my art. So I'm one of those cheesy people. I have been creating all my life. There is never a period in which I don't remember creating. In recent years, that creation process has gone from my hobbies and all the way through to now a career. So I started off down south in the UK, and at school, year 7, this is the oldest artwork I have in my studio. I have older artwork up in the loft, but I have some pieces that I hold really dear to my heart, and this is one of them. So both clay. I even dated this one as Art Project Year 7, and it's built of, I remember the task, we had to do our initials, so CLA was mine, and it was our favourite thing. So for me, it was home, baking, chocolate, and of course art. And it's still looking really good, despite being, I don't even remember how old I am, despite being a couple of decades old. So there it is, my oldest piece of artwork in my studio. I always remember at school I was always welcomed by the art teachers. Even that, there's always that one teacher that's always grumbly, always like, oh, this, that and the other. She always welcomed me in her own way, and that meant a lot to me because of things that went on personally during my childhood. But we had, so this is a second piece from year 7 again. I had no idea that was it. And again, this has actually stayed really nicely. There's a little bit of smudging on the paint, but I remember on these activity days we had to, they said, design a fish in clay. You can see that this piece is 3D, so if I hung it up anywhere or sat it on a shelf, it is 3D, the eyes staring at you. It's all textured there. And we had to try and paint it. I don't know whether it was just the primary colours, that's what I stuck to, but I remember sketching this out, and I have that sketchbook still somewhere in this house. And then we designed the fish, made it bulbous, and you might not be able to see it on camera, but it's quite matte, so we never covered this in anything. So this is the paint that I painted in year 7. It's weird that I don't have any of my sketchbooks down here, but I do have my 3D pieces. So that's a throwback. That is an absolute throwback to year 7. Pop those over there. I went on through secondary school to study artwork at GCSE. And I don't have much down here of my GCSEs. They were quite big pieces, or they were smaller pieces that I then tore up. So for our GCSEs, instead of sketchbooks, like I know some people had, we did ours on massive black sheets. So, or when you laid it out, you could see everything all in front of you. And I remember spending hours upon hours doing all the investigative studies, all the artist studies, and building my love of different materials. So one thing for me is that I am quite a multimedia artist. I try to not stick to one medium. I know I have in recent times. I've done a lot more painting than anything else. But one of my goals this year, or within the coming few years, is to get back to practicing in different mediums. And I'll show you some of the work that I did during my IB, International Baccalaureate, and my university studies. And it's only since I stopped university that I stopped sort of creating other materials, but I'm soon to get back into it. But back to the story. So we've done year 7, we're on to GCSE. And I said GCSE, I don't have much down here. However, I do have 3 eyes. If you came to my solo exhibition back in September, you'll have recognised these. These are also on my website if you wanted to have a look. However, this now sits on my wall that I showed you a couple of weeks ago. And this is acrylic paint of, I want to say Snake Eye was the reference. Yeah, it's got to be. So the one thing you can't see is this piece is very textural. So all these little bumps in here, that is all texture. And it is definitely one of my more proud pieces, hence why it now lives on my little gallery wall. And it reminds me of the things that I have achieved and the things that I can still achieve. So I'm hoping to do some more studies like this in the coming future again. Jumping forward, I moved from down south. Oh, pop this down here. Okay. I moved down south after doing my GCSEs up to the M4 corridor. And I did, instead of A-levels at college, I did a course called the International Baccalaureate. And that is 6 subjects rolled into one, as well as theory of knowledge and an extended essay. So I ended up doing in college higher level art, English and psychology, which is, they say, roughly first year of university level, just below. And then I did standard level German, physics and maths, and that was about A-level. Theory of knowledge, basically you sit there and question everything you know, how you know it, why you know it. And then extended essay was writing an essay on a topic that we specifically chose. So art was one of my strong suits in this, and we had to develop our own topic. So it wasn't like A-level, if any of you have experienced it, where you are given a set of questions or a set of statements and you have to go from them, much like GCSE. No, this was where you had to create your own project and follow it from there. So I started with the project of black and white because it's a very controversial topic. I like to be a little bit out there with some of my stuff. However, I ended up focusing on the human body because, simply put it, black and white, it's not all that. Let's say it's not all that. And it was also not only for skin colour, but also the way we perceive the human body. And this kind of developed my interest, let's say, in things to do with the human body. So one of the things that I really got into was looking at feet. My friends thought I was insane because it's feet. Hear me out. So feet are something that people are like, oh god, that's so, no, I couldn't. But they're the things that literally hold us up every single day. They're, to me, a fascinating thing because everyone's toes work in different ways. We have the same muscles, and yet, you know, you scrunch in pain or you like flick your little toe out. And it's just something that just caught my eye, and it wasn't something that people expect to see when they see artwork of the human body. So my teachers, I'm very much a perfectionist, as you can tell by the lines of the pieces in the background. But my lecturers or my teachers told me to let loose a little bit, have some fun. And that led me into producing wire feet. And it actually made me go into the darkroom. So this is one of the first times I used the darkroom over in college, and this is, oh, it's that way. And this is of photograms. So photograms are where you shine light onto a light sensitive piece of paper, and wherever the light hits, the paper goes black, and wherever light doesn't hit, the paper stays white. So this completely abstracts the notion of feet, and this has been hung up in our house for 3 years. No one's noticed it. No one's realised what the subject is. No one's gone, oh, that's so weird, because it is ultimately an abstract piece of work. And still one of my favourites. So I played around with that, and it inspired me then to do something with it. So I ended up producing a series of 3 canvases, including one with string, one just painted, and then one with tissue paper on top. And I have them here. So these are based off of those photograms and incorporating the coloured scale. So all this texture here, all these lines that you can see shadows of, they are string. So if I pop it this way, you can start to see the string coming around here, trailing through. You can hear it. So that there is the string. And I have been torn up about these ones. I did put them up for sale, but they never sold. And so I was thinking about painting over them and trying something different. There's number 2. So you can see that they start to get completely abstracted. And then the tissue paper one, which is the most fragile of them all. So if I shine it like that, you can start to see all that texture on that canvas. And this was the most difficult one because the tissue paper moves around as you paint on it if you don't have it fully secured. And because this is all textured, it's not. So even now, when I press into it, it does move. So it's a very, very fragile one compared to the others. The artwork that I also produced during this time included my first abstract portrait. So I will show you Chloe a little bit later, but some of you might recognise if I say the blue and yellow portrait that you might have sneakily seen behind me. The sister of this one was my original one, and it was all shades of blue with purples and greys, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it, and she was sold. So as much as I would love to have her back in my life, I'm also really proud that it's now, I still believe, down at Blueberry Wave in Cirencester. It's the colours of their company, and they were overwhelmed to have it in their, I want to say, main meeting room. I was just overwhelmed. Who can blame me? One of my other bigger pieces for the International Baccalaureate was also, I welded a pair of ribs. Again, have a look on my website at the artwork page. But one I keep in my studio, told you I was in my cozies, is this bad boy. So yes, this is a Chiron. I had a slight obsession with him when I was younger, okay? And then it's quotes from different TV series and different shows, and books that's predominantly around the human body. So there's one at the top here from House. So if anyone's watched House, you'll recognise that one. There's a couple in here from Aragon, from Songs of Ed Sheeran's as well, and it's ones that spoke to me as a person, but also as well questions a few things. So there's a few strong statements in here, a few strong pieces that, unless you know the context, can be completely taken out. But it's also fun to see people's reactions when they're like, oh, okay. So again, this one, I'm aware of the reflections, is on my website if you want to take a look at it in full. I'm now spotting all the other artwork that I've done. It's just snuck, it's in little nooks and crannies in here. So after I had left college, it was off to university. And university, I studied art and psychology. A lot of people are like, oh, that's amazing. It was good. I'm not gonna lie to you, it was a good course. My university experience wasn't the amazing experience you may hear from other people, but I think it was a good course. So I did 60% art and 40% psychology, and it was literally split between the lectures like that. So it allowed me to do a lot of creating while keeping my brain busy in something that I had only had a couple of years experience in education, but I had experience in the outside world. So in first year, we created canvases, we ripped apart the ways we knew how to draw and paint, we created videos, sculptures, books, A1 huge drawings, and ultimately relearn how art can be created. And this set us up for the next 3 years where basically there were no boundaries. So the only thing that I actually have from first year are these tiny little men. So I've got to be really careful when opening this. These are from my first year's summative sculpture, and the summative sculpture, well, any summative piece of work is that final piece of work that you get graded on in the year. So everything kind of builds up to this moment. And I did, it was impossible sculptures. So I put mine to scale, and mine was a block, a massive block of Jenga. So it was the impossible Jenga of where people physically would have to play with Jenga, and this was like 2x4 wood, that big, by about that length. and all these little people I created by hand. If it wants to focus, put it in front of my face. Nope. All these tiny people I created by hand out of clay. So this one's got a missing arm, it's meant to put into the context of this tower. So some people were having a whale of a time. This person here is just having a casual sit. I just sat there. I had a baby in here somewhere. Someone's lost its limbs. It can get quite brutal. Trying to pick people out that aren't gonna rock the boat, so to speak. There we go. Here's another person. Just having a chill walk along. So I wanted to create a little story out of them. A little something. With that, again, I'm connecting back to the human body. They're safe again. So they've actually lasted now 7 years. I got a memory on my phone a few days ago of it saying it's 7 years since you did this, and they're still surviving. So after first year, where basically we were torn apart and said, hey, you can create art in this many ways. Art can be the piece of writing that you create, it can be a blank wall, it can be miniature sculpture that's actually meant to be huge. We then went on to second year, where we had to start developing sort of our own ideas, our own ways. And as part of second year, you may have seen us in the background. I'm not as tanned as that in real life. This was my first ever self-portrait. I really don't like using myself as a reference. However, my lecturer at the time was like, we're going to do this, we're all going to do this. So everyone that was in our little group, we did this. We created a pop-up exhibition there inside of the year 2 art studio. And it was forcing ourselves out of that comfort zone, forcing ourselves to think a little bit outside the box. We had to think of ways of hanging it. So it's just a little piece of wood cut diagonally, and then on the wall, the other diagonal would go that way. So it'd slip in, and you'd have this almost shadow behind the wall. But she survived very well, only one small sort of bit there. I was quite proud of it. I did choose a picture where I am a little bit more golden. But that, again, like because I've never done a self-portrait, it was kind of like, oh god, I hid it away for a few years and now it lives proudly on one of my shelves on full display up here in my studio. But once that was all done with, I was like, what do I do? So for me, second year was a lot of experimenting with myself. So I did performance, I did video, and my final performance was me dancing in front of 2 lecturers, telling them to see me for the strong moves that I'm doing, and not for the seductive way in which the body was presented. It was really tough to get that to come across. However, I had some good sort of backup elements with the audio in the room, and it was taken positively. One of the other things I did is I experimented and took a class, I want to say, in having a mould, plaster moulds. So I was really happy with this one. You can see on the nails a little bit, it's chipped, it's gone through the walls a little bit, but this is, bear in mind this is 6 years ago. It's been really dusty, however a little brush over with a makeup brush or something normally does wonders. There is actually still, the product we use to cast is alginate. There's actually still some alginate in there because I am not getting it out of that like tiny hole there. It wasn't worth the pain. So I'm going to stop there. It ended up being a really long recording, so I'm going to split this into 2 videos so I don't bore you too much. But please come back to see how the rest of my artwork has developed, and see some of my newer, bigger artwork, as well as some pieces that you might not have seen before. So I will see you next week.